Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Books of the Month. I'm your host, Bishop O.C. Pringle, and I'm so excited to have our featured guest with us today, author Carol Scutt. Welcome, Carol, to Books of the Month. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, let's see. I'll be 70 years old
Oh, wow.
in November.
What water are you all drinking in Tennessee?
I don't know. 2 days ago, you would have believed that, and then some. But I'm feeling better today. So, I know it's just good genes, I guess.
Okay.
But I live on Norris Lake in La Follette, Tennessee, and I have 2 children, a son and a daughter, and 6 grandchildren.
Okay.
Lots of nieces and nephews.
Awesome. And what do you do other than write books and be
Well,
a mother and a grandmother?
Actually, the book basically will tell the story about my husband's passing. And so up until the time he passed, we were really active together in our church's various ministries. I've tried to stay active and tried to honor my husband in various ways, but not as busy as I used to be. I am truly retired now.
Okay, retired.
Well, a homemaker.
Okay.
I worked in a bank for 20 years
Okay.
and did a few other things. But
Awesome. Now, what's the name of your church?
Cedar Hill Baptist Church,
Cedar Hill Baptist Church. Is that in La Follette?
La Follette.
La Follette, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
La Follette.
Yeah, everybody tries to class it up, and really, it's just
It is French, so.
it sounds French. It's
Yeah.
just rednecks and.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, Lost Without Him. What was your inspiration for writing Lost Without Him?
Actually, I started the book maybe 20 years ago. I wrote the first 4 chapters or so, some 20 years ago. My husband and I had fallen in love again, and I wanted to tell the story of how that happened, how that came to be. And then life took over, and I put the book in a drawer, and it wasn't until he passed away that nieces and nephews would come and say, "How did you guys last so long?" I mean, a lot of divorces and remarriages in the family, and they wanted answers to particular, stories about our life. And so I decided to pick the book back up and continue the story and tell how we managed to weather the really rough periods in our marriage.
Wow. So, who met at Kroger's?
Well, he already worked at Kroger.
Okay.
He worked in the back room, and I got a job as a cashier.
Okay.
So that's where we met.
That's where you met at Kroger. So, how long were you married?
We were married 47 years.
Wow.
And we had dated 2.5 years, so we were just a few months shy of having been together for 50.
So, how long has it been since he transitioned?
He went home to be with the Lord December 7th of 2016.
Okay. And so, since then, you've been carrying on the legacy.
Been trying.
So, tell me, Lost Without Him. Who is the him?
Well, it's up to you. I was lost after Paul's passing. I didn't know who to be or how to be. I'd always been his wife and his partner and his friend and his lover and all of those things. But I would have been eternally lost if Paul hadn't introduced me to Jesus.
So, he was the one that led you to Christ.
He's the one who led me to the lady who led me to Christ. So it was just kind of some way to talk about being lost without the Lord, being lost without the love of your life.
Lost without the Lord and also lost without the love of your life. Okay, so you still find yourself grieving over the loss of your husband?
Oh, absolutely.
You do?
I do.
Okay. And what about your children? Are they experiencing the same?
I don't really have a relationship with my son. But my daughter, she was 9 months pregnant when Paul passed away. And she was about to have the first granddaughter.
Oh, wow.
And Paul was so looking forward to this little girl. And so, it was very difficult for her doing the whole postpartum thing and still grieving because her father had only been gone a few weeks at that point.
Yes.
And so disappointed that she didn't get to show him her daughter, that he never got to meet Nora. And so she's still grieving. She's a very busy mother, but when she slows down, she grieves.
So let me get this straight. When Lost Without Him, the him in your on your cover and your title, are you speaking of lost without your husband or lost without Christ? When you speak of lost without Him,
Well, I would say primarily it's lost without Christ, because I don't think our relationship would have survived, those nearly 50 years without the Lord working in our lives. We nearly divorced on one occasion, and God. Sometimes you can't see how He works in your life except through retrospect.
that's right.
You don't feel it at the time, but then you can look back and you can see how He orchestrated all of this to get you to right here. And I saw how Christ blessed our marriage and gave us this incredible love for each other. And that love basically dictated service. And so we became really involved in our church. And it's all tied up together, but I know first and foremost I would be eternally lost without
Wow.
Christ.
Exactly.
I will see Paul again.
That's right.
Right.
That is the truth. That is the truth. And it still affects you now deeply.
Very, very much.
Every
so.
single time you mention his name, I'm watching your eyes. I'm watching everything. Your whole presence here. Every single time you mention Paul's name, it affects you. Have you ever felt the need to have any type of grief counseling?
Oh, I've done it all.
You have done that.
I've done Christian counseling, and I had a friend who had lost a son, and he referred me to the woman that he talked to. And I saw her, for a year and a half. The problem is, all of the trite things that people tell you about grief, may not fit your circumstance. And we all have to figure it out in our own way. For some people, it's, there's a lady in our church, she lost her husband very shortly after Paul passed, and 6 months later she was remarried. When I said till death do us part, I didn't mean till he died. I meant till I died.
Wow.
That I would, be his wife until I died. And I just can't imagine any kind of existence. I had the hardest time trying to figure out any kind of life that didn't include Paul. And because, like I said, we did everything together. We talked to each other about 4 hours every day. And we did the ministries together. I helped him, he helped me. He was an incredible human being.
Wow.
He actually was.
Wow. Apparently he was.
He was.
Apparently he was. And the memories are still there. They're still dear to you. Do you have a lot of pictures of him in your home still in the same exact place? Or because sometimes after a spouse transitions, they will move the pictures, or do you still have them in place?
I still have them.
Do you feel like that helps, or helps you deal with his passing, or do you think that adds to the grief?
I think if I went through the house and removed all of the pictures, it would feel like I was trying to erase him from my life.
You.
And I think that would be more hurtful than sometimes I'll walk by a cute picture of the two of us and just say, wasn't that fun?
Mm-hmm.
And kind of makes me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
So I enjoy having the pictures around.
Enjoy having pictures
I
around.
do.
Okay. Or do you feel that you're able to pretty much be in control of the grief, wherein you decide how and when you grieve?
Most of the time.
Okay.
Most of the time. And it's like, because Paul was he was the treasurer, and he was also a trustee in our church.
At the church.
At the church. And he was loved by so many people that they kind of want to help take care of me a little bit.
Oh, wow.
So
That's awesome.
every Sunday when somebody says, "How are you doing?" I just say I'm doing great. Today's a good day. And they're not always good days. But I have found that grief makes most people really uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah. So.
They don't know what to say, and there isn't anything to do about it. So the best thing, I find that I spend more time comforting other people than I feel like I receive comfort.
I believe that Lost Without Him would be a major blessing to anyone who reads it. Telling your story and speaking of your experiences could help others. Of course, your book, Lost Without Him, is not designed to make them grieve, but to appreciate those moments and to remember the good times and live on your life with them still being dear to your heart. How much is your book?
Well, you can get it on Amazon. It's $19.99.
Okay.
Which it's going to be republished, and when it's republished, it'll be back down at $12.99.
Okay. Is there a website? You have a website?
I do have a website, and there's a link on there where you can purchase it
What's
through
your
the
website?
publisher. It's carolscutt.com.
carolscutt.com. You can see that at the bottom of the screen. And where else can we find your book other than on carolscutt.com?
Well, you can get it, Amazon, Barnes & Noble's website. You can get it through them as well. It'll be more widely available once it's re-released.
Carol, in your book, you talked about your father.
Yes.
Tell us about your father.
Well, my father was an alcoholic, and we grew up in a household very poor and in an abusive environment. He beat my mother, landed in jail, all of the things that happen to people that have an abuse issue. And I have vowed that I would never have anything to do with anybody that drank. And I wanted my life to be different than what my mother had. But when I was 12, and my father left the house drunk as a skunk and was gone for a day and a half, came back sober and saved. And he never had another drop of alcohol the rest of his life.
Wow.
We were still poor, but at least the alcoholism wasn't a part of our everyday life.
He left for a day and a half and came back. What happened?
Well, he basically went from one bar to the next bar to the next bar, and then when he decided to come home, he couldn't remember how to get home. And he stopped at this little Methodist church to get directions. And the Methodist minister brought him in and plied him with coffee and talked to him about the Lord and led my father to Christ.
That is an awesome
It
story.
was an unbelievable story.
That is awesome. So he was saved, and then you meet this phenomenal man by the name of Paul, who leads you to Christ.
Yes.
And he has transitioned again. Tell us about that experience, his transition. There was something unique and special about that.
Well, on December 6th, the night of December 6th, right before Paul headed to bed, he kissed me and said, "I love you." And I said, "I love you back." And he goes, "Oh, I know you do, but you don't have any idea how much I love you. The next day started pretty much the same. He went to the church and spent some time with the pastor. Came home, we had coffee together. But about the time we would usually break to have tea in the afternoon, he came in and said, I'm going to have to lay down. I don't feel well. And I followed him into the bedroom and pulled the chair up to the edge of the bed and said, what's going on? And he said, I feel like there's an elephant on my chest. And I said, baby, you're having a heart attack. And I ran to the phone and called EMS. And he had rolled over onto his side. And I said, honey, we need to go. We can meet him halfway down the mountain. And he said, can you give me a minute? I feel like I'm going to throw up. And I said, I'll take a wastebasket, but we have to go. And he rolled over onto his back. And he looked up at me. And then he looked up at the ceiling. And he goes, oh, God. He didn't say it like he was in pain. He didn't say it like, he was afraid. He said it like a greeting. And that was his last breath. And I didn't know what to do, but I started to perform CPR on him, trying to I couldn't hear I put my head on his chest, but I couldn't hear his heart because, mine's whooshing through my own ear. And I finally find a pulse in his wrist, and I do the CPR, waiting for the EMS to get there. And I did that for about 20 minutes.
Wow.
And screaming at him, open your eyes, look at me, don't leave me, do not leave me. And he'd open his eyes and look at me, and then they'd close again, and I'd say, Paul, open your eyes, look at me. And then it was like a switch had been flipped, and you could just see the light and the life go out of his eyes. And I crawled in bed with him, wrapped myself around him, and told him what a good man he had been, and how blessed my life had been with him in it. And that was the beginning of the new journey that I was forced to take. Because I never went anywhere or did anything without Paul. And all of a sudden I have the hardest journey of my life to do alone. Well, not alone, but without my partner. And the book it is about grief and grieving and dealing with death and all of that, but the book really is about overcoming most of the rough patches in your life, and how with Christ in your life, at least you have hope.
That's right.
And I tried to portray it. There's a chapter in the book about salvation, about how to be saved. I didn't want the book just to be a good read. I wanted it to have a purpose.
Ministry, yeah. Well, of course, I'm noticing that you have scriptures at the beginning of each chapter. Quite inspiring, inspirational scriptures. And I'm glad that the Spirit of the Lord led you to put that there. It kind of like sets the tone for each chapter.
It does.
If you were to say you had a favorite chapter, what would that be?
Wow. The chapters are quite small, short. So if you put together 2 or 3 or 4, our courtship, because his father was a Baptist minister, and I lived at the lake. An example would be, we lived at the lake. We were going to go swimming after church one Sunday, and I ran in and grabbed the towels and got ready to head down to the lake, and he said, "Where's your dad?" And I said, "What?" And he was like, "You should ask your dad to come with us." And I said, "If I go in there and ask him to chaperone us, he's going to think that I think that you can't be trusted. And he's going to tell you to go home. So you're going to behave yourself? Yes. I go, well, then let's just go swimming. He was such a gentleman. And I mean, he had impeccable integrity.
Awesome.
And I wasn't raised that way. So some of it always came as a surprise. But those were, our courtship was probably the favorite part
Your
of the book for
courtship.
me. Yeah.
The beautiful pictures that you have in your book, those are absolutely awesome pictures. You all were a very good looking couple. And what's 48 years?
Almost.
Almost 48 years.
Of marriage.
Isn't that something? Isn't that something? So, your granddaughter,
Yes.
what is her name?
Her name is Nora.
Nora.
Yes.
Okay, how old is Nora now? Nora
She's
should be 2.
Yeah, she'll be 3 on New Year's Eve.
Hey, Nora. And your daughter's name?
Jennifer.
Jennifer and Nora.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And we pray for your son.
Yes.
We pray for, is that Paul Jr. or?
No, his name is Matthew.
Matthew. We pray for Matthew also. Hey, Matthew. Matthew may very well see this.
I hope so.
Well, this is a very good presentation that the Spirit of the Lord laid on your heart to render to the body of Christ and to anyone who's willing to read. And it can definitely minister to their hearts and to their experiences, especially those that are going through a grieving period. Weeping may endure for a night. Joy cometh in the morning. I saw that at the beginning of one of your one of your chapters.
Yes.
And that's an awesome selection. An awesome selection.
Thank you.
What else about your book you want our audience to know?
Well, it's actually a pretty good description of most people's lives, I think. You know, we were fortunate in that Paul's family was poor. His dad was a poor Baptist minister, and my family was poor. But we trusted the Lord, and we tried to always make our decisions based on what we believed the Lord would want us to do. And God blessed our lives. We went from poverty to affluence and world travel and, you know, all those things that he told me when we were very first dating, that he would see to it that I had everything I ever dreamed or imagined. And, I mean, I didn't dream or imagine what I ended up with. So
Wow.
he met that promise
Above and beyond.
above and beyond.
Isn't that something? That is awesome. That is awesome. So at the church, how are they dealing with with losing Paul?
Well, Paul was pastor's best friend.
Oh,
Yes. And I don't think most people realize that there are very few people that the pastor can actually confide in.
correct.
And so they're kind of alone a lot with their thoughts and trying to figure out how to solve problems. But Paul and Pastor walked every morning, and they would talk, and Paul would weigh in if he was asked to. And when Paul passed, Pastor was without his biggest counselor,
What's your pastor's name?
Ronnie.
Ronnie
Arnold.
Pastor Ronnie Arnold. I'm sure he's going to see this.
I hope so.
Keep up the good work, Pastor. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you, Carol, for being with us here at Books of the Month. Your story is extremely inspirational. It is extremely a blessing to have you on our set
Thank
because you will definitely help a whole lot of people, especially wives that are going through what you've been through. Just because there's some tears, that doesn't mean you're still going through it. But those memories, they warm your heart.
They do.
They warm your heart.
They do.
And again, those pictures in the back, that was a good touch. That was a really good move with the book because it really told the story. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Books of the Month. I'm sure you've enjoyed our conversation with Carol Scutt. Check out her book. Go purchase it. It'll be a blessing to you. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place. God bless you. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.